So it's like we need to be people who are people of our word, people who pray, and people who have a tendency to go astray. Like we can wander and we need to be brought back, or we need to go seek after those who have wandered and bring them back. It's back to the basics, right? It's really basic stuff. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Review Preview podcast. Is this thing rolling?
Yeah.
Okay, I forgot to ask you if the camera was working.
said it. I try and catch all the good stuff that happens before, just for like the outtakes. At the beginning.
You did that. Yeah, I noticed that
Yeah.
last week.
I won't put anything confidential in there or embarrassing.
Bore my soul out to
Stuff
you
immediately
2
gets
minutes
deleted.
ago.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that was good. Yeah, because you caught the little bit about money.
Yeah.
Me and Painter were talking about money there. That was
Yeah.
good. I also noticed last week. Oh, first of all, welcome back to the Review Preview podcast.
Hello.
Shane Hamstra, Pastor Danny Martinez, and myself here. And last week I noticed that I had, if you go back and look at the video, I had a half-eaten apple
I saw that.
that was starting to turn brown on the corner of my desk.
It's just like natural. That's what we try to be here at
right.
the Review Preview.
Natural?
Yeah.
It's to be natural.
It's natural. That's
yeah.
it. So, yeah, well, here we are. We got all three of us here. Danny,
Yeah.
is your mic working? I just want to make sure.
Is it working?
I can hear him.
Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, no, it is. It's good. I think it is.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's always tricky to make sure that all these buttons and stuff are clicked. But I think it's working.
Yeah.
I think so.
Sounds good.
If not, then you're not missing a whole lot. So.
Yeah, exactly. You can just watch it without any audio.
Right.
Exactly.
You can just add Danny's own subtitles
Yeah,
underneath
exactly.
every
That's a
time
good
his
idea.
mouth moves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll
Just
put words
dub
in his
over
mouth.
it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, man.
All right. Yeah, so we did some ministry this last week at our church.
Yeah.
We were in James.
Yeah.
We're gonna finish up James soon, but we're in
Second
James 5 verses
When you said you're going to finish it up,
7-11.
my mind just went to during the sermon you're preaching, and you're like, I could preach 3 more sermons on this one topic.
Yeah.
And now we're finishing it up. So I think it's hard to believe.
It's hard to believe that it's really gonna end this week, right?
I'll believe it when I see it.
What?
I keep telling you, I'm like, we'll see if it's the last sermon.
Pastor
We'll
Sean's
see.
is going to, at the very end, and surprise, we're going to do 3 more.
A
It is-
year-long series
to
on
make
chapter
people
5.
extra uncomfortable all through James.
We've been in it since September
It's good.
18th.
Yeah.
I looked
good.
back and I had to look at the calendar and I was like, wow, we've been. I mean, we had a few one-off sermons here and there in a series for Christmas and a series for Easter, I think. But yeah, so we've been in a slugfest for a while now.
That's still nothing. Like that, the guy, I forget his name, who preached through Job for like 25 years, and then he got laid off from his church, and then he came back like a few years later, and then like picked up right where he left off. And
Really?
just
And just
going.
kept
You
going.
remember
Yeah.
5 years ago where we were.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is I actually had more to preach in the sermon, but I cut like 2 pages out of it. And I was actually going to talk because James talks about Job. And so Job is kind of this massive sufferer.
Yeah.
But we forget that all these stories are really pointing to Jesus. Jesus was the ultimate sufferer because he had never done wrong.
Yeah.
You know? So I was going to talk a little bit about Jesus, but we'll get to that at some point. We'll
don't
pick up
skip
those
ahead.
2 pages.
Yeah.
So
I don't want to skip ahead.
yeah.
Someday we'll get to the part where Jesus kept his like luscious like locks.
Oh my
perfect.
gosh.
Oh,
we were talking
yeah.
about that in every movie that Jesus is in. He just has like perfect hair.
Yeah.
It's like, how many hours of his ministry did this theoretical Jesus in this movie spend doing his hair in the morning? Anyway, not to get
Hairdressing
distracted
ministry.
or to drift into heresy.
So we're talking about this last week. We talked about verses 7 through 11, and we addressed this topic of suffering. And I talked about how James is just so raw and how he talks about it. He doesn't ignore the elephant in the room. He actually addresses it. He says in verse 1 of chapter 1, like, hey, by the way, you're part of the dispersion. You're not where you should be, and you're undergoing a lot of difficulties and suffering. And so instead of like not addressing the elephant in the room, he addresses it.
Right.
And then I joked with the congregation, is like, he's so raw that he says, okay, now eat the elephant. It's like, here it is now. And how do you eat an elephant? You do it one bite at a time. So James says, what I think James is getting at in verses 7 through 11 is that the Lord is fulfilling his purposes even in suffering. So our sufferings are full of the purposes of God. And so therefore there's a few things. One, he says, don't grumble. And then he says, be patient. So there's two admonitions in the passage. It's like, don't grumble about your sufferings, and just be patient, be steadfastly patient through them. And then there's this one massive reason why, and it's because the Lord is at hand, and he's a judge, and he's standing at the door to determine, and his verdict is going to determine whether or not, is based on how we handled these sufferings, whether we were grumbling or whether we were patient in them. So that was a nutshell of the whole sermon.
Yeah.
But
Well,
any things that you guys think?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, even there's obviously a lot, like, different people have different burdens to bear, and some of them a lot more than others. Yeah. But to all of us, no matter what we're struggling with, those are still legitimate struggles. Like everyone in the church is struggling with something, even if some people struggle with greater crosses to bear, so to speak. It's all very applicable to us.
Yeah, you mentioned patience. I think that's a huge thing to pick up on, especially because we live in a time when it's just so easy for everything to be instant and now, and we want food now, we want entertainment now, we want relief now. Yeah. And so when you were preaching, it reminded me of the book that we're reading. The book we're reading, for those of you who don't know, is The Care of Souls. And last week, as we read through a chapter, and it was talking about suffering and dealing with some just the negative things, but just the importance of the ministry of just presence, and sometimes we don't have the right words. As ministers, I want to have the right. Yeah. Let me give you this passage, and everything will be better. And even today, we talked about dipping into our own wells. And how our wells are so shallow and we get easily depleted. But just the understanding of being present with someone and in their grief and trials is huge. Yeah. It's huge. Yeah. So it's a good reminder for all of us, whether it's something very drastic or something that we might see as menial in our everyday lives, just to be patient and endure. Yeah. It reminded me of 1 Corinthians when Paul's talking about, what is love? Love is patient is what some translations say, but I think that the more accurate is love is long suffering. It's like, that doesn't sound very pleasurable.
Long suffering.
That doesn't sound very romantic. I long suffer you. It's like, no, hold on. But it is a picture of what Christ does for us and how he's called us to love, and that is patient. And through endurance. And so James hits it.
And that's what I pointed out, is like there's two things that is necessary for patience to even become patience. One is some sort of adversity, some sort of trial or suffering or hardship or affliction or something I don't like. And then patience also requires the passing of time, which is also something we just can't control. You just can't. No matter what we do, we can't speed it up, we can't slow it down. Right. And I joked about, in the world of music, you can set a metronome and you can play a song faster or slower, but in real life, time just keeps ticking and we can't speed it up. We can't slow it down. So patience requires some sort of adversity, and patience requires the passing of time. So that's what we all get to deal with. That's what that's what we're going to have to do, is we're going to have to deal with these hardships over the course of time, knowing that with every ticking of the clock, that the Lord is still standing at the door. He's getting ready to enter in. He's at hand. Yeah. It's imminent. And it's either going to grant relief to those of us who are looking to him and crying out to him to relieve us from our season of needing to be patient, or he's going to come in and deliver a verdict that's going to bring about a whole bunch of destruction because we've averted our eyes from him and we've worn ourselves out trying to take care of all of our problems ourselves. And we haven't really eaten the elephant at all. We've just kind of made it bigger.
Yeah. That's where my mind went to when you said that the Lord is at hand immediately. It's like, wow, I think that's awesome. I'm excited for that.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah.
But then you get the other, and then I think my mind immediately goes to, there's people who don't think that's awesome. That's really scary. Yeah. And so, it is certainly a comfort to us here while we wait for the coming of our Lord. that, one day that, as Revelation says, there'll be no more sorrows, no more tears. But until that day, we wait patiently. And so, and we still have a commission that God has given us. We have to go and reach the lost, because the Lord is at hand.
So I think that's one thing, is that's what James tells us to do, but it's really important to like really focus on making sure that we don't do what James also told us not to do, which is grumble. Right? It just makes, so if you have to do something that you don't like throughout the passing of time, it's our natural tendency to like gripe and complain and grumble and murmur, right? And so it's interesting because James, the Israelites get a hard time in the Old Testament. They're brought out of the land of death, being promised the promised land of life, right? And God's leading them there. And because of their unbelief, which it's a staggering cost of unbelief, an 11-day journey takes 40 years. That's massive, right? So now you're in it even longer because they choose to grumble and disbelieve. So it's like the Israelites were grumbling against God, but that's not what James warns against. He says, don't grumble against each other. So he uses that, familial term, brotherhood and sisterhood. Yeah. Brothers and sisters, don't grumble against not God, but each other. Mm-hmm. And that's our tendency, right? Is like when we have affliction or adversity and something is just kind of stuck in the craw of our lives, we take it out on each other. It's like, wait a minute. Yep. It's one thing to take it out on God. You can lament and you can complain in a right way to him. But when you start causing division and fractions in the church because, you're projecting your legitimate frustrations on something else, on someone else, that's not good. Right. Yeah. And I think that's our tendency, is like, have you ever been legitimately frustrated with something or someone, but taken that frustration out on the wrong someone, or something, right? Yeah. Like you throw a glass or you yell at your wife or whatever, it's like, what, I just took all my frustrations out on you and the wrong person. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times we can project those things on the wrong people and we grumble against each other.
Yeah.
Yep,
and tear each other down.
And I feel like that can be natural, even like in conversations if it's with someone you're not familiar with, or you just don't know, like, what to talk about. You can sometimes like default to like, well, did you hear about that? Or wait till you hear this. Yeah. And it's often a negative thing that follows. Like,
those people on that side did this thing, and that's actually, so that's going to be my my sermon in not this Sunday but next Sunday. Okay, so that's I'm referencing that passage. So
good,
it'll be good.
Excellent.
But it's interesting, like when you listen to people's testimonies, or even like you mentioned the Israelites, as you read through the Bible, some of the biggest times of growth in people's lives, or when God shows himself the most clearly and strongly, is in the midst of trials and adversities.
Yeah.
Like you look at, obviously we know the ending to the story of the, Israelites crossing the Red Sea. But it's like God waited till the very last second to help them in that case. And it's like from their point of view, you're like, yeah, where's God gone?
And they still had to cross the Jordan.
Yeah.
They still had to step into an adverse situation. It's like there's water running.
Yeah.
And we got to walk into there and somehow it's going to miraculously stop. It's the same thing for us, right?
Yeah. It would have been a lot easier if God stopped the water first and then let them walk. He's like, no, like you go for it and trust, which
no, it's good.
It's good. Mm-hmm. Well, hey, we're going to finish up James this week, guys.
Yep.
We're going to do it. We're going to look at verses 12 through 20. You're shaking your head. No, we really are. And we're going to go. Honestly, 12 through 20, it honestly could be 3 sermons, because there's a lot of trees in the forest that we could stop and look at. But we're going to try to look at it all, like the forest as a whole. And it's really, James just goes back, when I was studying, he just goes back to the basics. This is what he's going to talk about. You need to be a person with personal integrity, verbal integrity. So mean what you say what you mean, be a person of your word. He's going to talk about, we need to be people who pray.
Yeah.
Praying he talks about 5 times in the passage. Mm-hmm. So it's like, we need to be people who are people of our word, people who pray, and people who have a tendency to go astray. Like we can wander and we need to be brought back, or we need to go seek after those who have wandered and bring them back. Mm-hmm. It's back to the basics, right? It's really basic stuff. So the continuation and the culmination of some of the themes that we've seen throughout James is in these final 8 verses. So the name of the sermon is called Pinky Swears, Prayers, and Repairs.
We were talking about that in the young adults group, like how we were just going through some of the titles of your sermon and just admiring how creative they were.
Have you ever
maybe a little bit clickbaity sometimes?
Clickbaity, So have you ever had to pinky swear somebody?
Yeah,
my children all the time.
Oh yeah, see?
Pinky swear. Yeah.
So we're gonna talk about pinky swears.
It's the
Actually,
real deal.
For those of you who want to do some study, like there's some origins like in Japan for the pinky swear, like it originated in Japan, I think, somewhere as I was doing some just surface level reading.
Yeah,
it's a lot worse there than just like if you like here, like if you break your pinky swear, you know what you're supposed to be able to do.
Break their
pinky.
Oh
right?
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. In Japan, it's a lot worse than that. Ooh. So we'll that's just a little teaser. Yeah. So now they all learn about.
Stare at them in shame.
Who knows if it's really true or not? I'm sure Ron and Katie Sisko, if they listen to the podcast,
that's a good point.
They're missionaries in Japan. Maybe they could give some insight into this.
A podcast throw out invitation.
There you go.
Look at their pinkies. Maybe.
Yeah. Oh no.
Oh yeah.
You can tell what kind of people they are by their
Man,
pinkies.
Yeah, their word.
All right, so we'll see you on Sunday. We're really excited about Sunday. We finish up James. Couple cool announcements we're going to give, and then also it's Communion Sunday, and we're going back to pre-COVID days. We're going to pass the elements and distribute them out, have a little bit more time for reflection and prayer and recommitting our lives to the Lord. So should be good. So bear with us. It's been a while since I've never done it here.
That's right.
So and some of our elders are new, and so hopefully we'll get all the elements distributed out in a timely fashion, and we get to honor the Lord with what He given, this meal of remembrance that He's given to us. So.
Yep. Very good.
All right. We'll all be listening intently to James because it's like a friend giving a final speech before he goes on a long journey away.
He actually does have a very weird way of ending his letter.
Yeah.
It's not like the Apostle Paul.
Don't read it yet.
Yeah, don't read. Well,
spoilers.
All right.
We can't tell people to not read their Bible.
Yeah. Whatever you do, don't do your devotions.
Yeah.
James and no.
All right, that's it. That's all we got today.
We better end it here.
All right. We'll see you guys. Thanks
Bye.
For being here. See you guys.